From the Oklahoman newsroom, this is an OSU update. I'm Jenny Carlson here in studio with Scott Wright, OSU beat writer. Scott, everybody's buzzing about Chuba, the choo-choo. He's out there doing great things every Saturday, it seems. He has 122 yards last week against Kansas, and it's ho-hum. But it seems like he is gaining steam in the Heisman race. We'll talk about that in a second. But I think a lot of people are wondering, how much longer is this guy going to be wearing Cowboy orange and black? It sounds like he is working hard enough to make that jump to the NFL, but will he? What's sort of the talk and the feel about where Chuba Hubbard is in that regard?
You know, it's really interesting because Chuba has sort of alluded to some things here and there. He's never really spoken directly to the topic, but early on in the season, whenever he was starting to really have some good performances and people were talking about his work ethic, he started talking about the things that motivate him, and one of those being wanting to provide for his family and give back to them for all the sacrifices that they made as he was coming up, and watching his mom work long hours and trying to provide for the family and being able to repay that. You start thinking, okay, maybe this is a guy that's thinking about the opportunity of cashing that NFL ticket next year after this season, and he's made some comments here and there that make you think that he's at least thinking about it. Then, of course, Mike Gundy offers some different opinions about the physicality and things like that, and he says that he's not just trying to keep Chuba in Stillwater for another year, which he would love, but he says he's got some actual concerns about whether he's ready for the physicality, because he's still, I mean, this is a guy who turned 20 years old in June. This is a very young football player. He's a third-year sophomore, but a very young football player right now. Well,
yeah, and it is a more physical game at the NFL. Not to say that major college football isn't, but he's not as strong as he is. He's not the big physical back.
Right.
Does that come into play, do you think? Or, I mean, there's obviously a lot of things he has to weigh as it relates to the NFL. How many years does he have in his legs? No running back ever knows that. Like, what are some of the things that you feel like that age thing, and that'll have to come into play? But do you think that all of that will sway him one way or another?
That will be, I think, a big part of the entire debate, because he's got the two sides of the scale being, yes, he's young and his body isn't as physically developed as it'll be a year from now or even farther down the line. But he also, as you mentioned, Jenny, running backs can only take so many hits. And we've seen that the lifespan of a running back, the shelf life of a running back in the NFL is very short right now. And so it's a really tough balance to try to figure out when is the right time to go. And you look around the NFL, and running backs at 207 pounds like he is right now, there's not a lot that are smaller than him. Now he's a different build, and obviously his speed is off the charts good. But we saw Justice Hill has had a tough time breaking in with the Baltimore Ravens. He's getting some spot work here and there, but he's got two guys who are 220, 240 pounds ahead of him on the depth chart. So bigger guys seem to succeed a little bit more and have a little bit longer shelf life in the NFL because of all the punishment that they take.
Yeah, and if you're in Chuba Hubbard's shoes, obviously you like running the football, but 30 carries, 35, I mean, he's got a lot of carries this year.
Yep.
Don't see that changing if he comes back to OSU. Let's talk about this Heisman situation. I don't know, situation sounds serious, but
right.
Chuba Hubbard has sort of been knocking at the door of being more in the conversation, and yet as this season's gone on, it's kind of been the same cast of characters: Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa, Jalen Hurts, those guys that are really talked about most in the Heisman conversation. Have you sort of sensed a little bit of a change as it relates to Chuba Hubbard as we've gotten later in the year, and obviously the injury to Tua doesn't look like he's going to finish out the season? How does this all shake out for Chuba as it relates to the Heisman?
It certainly seems that he's gaining a little bit of momentum right now. You mentioned Tua being a guy that's kind of knocked out of the race a little bit right now. Chase Young has taken a step back because of what he's dealt with in his off the field issues. There's some other guys that are fading a little bit, And Chuba Hubbard is sort of holding steady and moving up a little bit in some people's eyes. One straw poll from a national outlet I saw, he got a first place vote this week. He was one of only 3 guys who got a first place vote. Now he was still in 6th because the other votes didn't pull him up, but he got a first place vote from somebody. ESPN's poll, they've got him number 4 this week in their straw poll. So he's picking up some momentum. He continues to do outstanding things, even though his numbers over the weekend didn't blow anybody away. He did have the 42 yards on 2 receptions, which kind of gets forgotten about a little bit. And he's got 2 more games, particularly that Bedlam game on prime time, big stage, for an opportunity to go and possibly sway some voters. I don't think anybody out here is really expecting him to make a charge right now and go win this thing, but he's making some progress toward getting to New York for the ceremony at least.
Let's remember, 2,000 yards in a regular season would be significant.
Yep.
Not many guys have reached that point, even guys that have gotten invited to the Heisman before as running backs. And, you know, remember last year, the last week of the regular season, those conference championship games swayed things. So to say that we know who's going to win right now, seems like there's still a lot of football to be played here, Scott.
Yeah, there absolutely is. Who knows what's going to happen with Joe Burrow at LSU, and more injuries could come along. You hate to see that for anybody, but it's always a possibility in this game. So a lot of things could change right now, and Chuba has a couple of games to really make a strong push here. He could go put up some big numbers against a West Virginia team that's solid on defense, but not putting up a lot of points. Oklahoma State could do some things running the ball there, and then, like I said, that Bedlam game on the big stage with a lot of eyeballs on him.
Yep, for sure. Well, Chuba Hubbard has not been to New York. He would like to go someday, he says. Maybe he'll get to go next month. We'll see. Be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at Oklahoman.com and every day in the Oklahoman.